Good evening, I'm Katie Wilson and you are watching A News. Here are the top stories for tonight. New Trump tariffs are set to have wide-reaching effects as international allies prepare to respond. The death toll is continuing to rise after the earthquake in Myanmar. There are now fears that diseases could spread. Tensions between China and Taiwan escalate as China conducts military drills near the island. US President Donald Trump is set to impose a wide range of new tariffs, marking what he calls Liberation Day, in signalling the start of a new chapter in the country's trade policy. The tariffs will affect everything from automobiles to agriculture as international allies prepare to respond.
As you know, on April 2nd.
The new measures are part of what Trump is calling Liberation Day, a move to restructure trade relationships and reduce America's reliance on foreign goods. Among the most notable changes is a 25% tariff on imported cars, effective on April 3rd, with additional duties on auto parts to follow in May. These tariffs are central to Trump's America First policy, aiming to boost domestic manufacturing and reduce trade imbalances. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says this is just the beginning.
April 2nd, 2025 will go down as one of the most important days in modern American history. Our country has been one of the most open economies in the world, and we have the consumer base hands down, the best consumer base. But too many foreign countries have their markets closed to our exports. This is fundamentally unfair.
A wide variety of sectors will feel the effects of these new tariffs. The automotive industry is among the most impacted, with 25% duties on imported cars and auto parts. Mexican farmers and tequila manufacturers are also concerned, as the tariffs could severely affect the livestock and beverage industries. Oil and gas industries will also be hit, as China is imposing up to 25% tariffs on US crude oil exports, a market worth $10 billion. US LNG exports to China, valued at 5.9 billion cubic feet per day in 2024, could face similar disruptions. Lumber imports from Canada could see tariffs added to the existing 20 to 25% duties, affecting the $10 billion US construction industry. Agriculture, especially soybeans and pork, could see 10 to 15% tariff hikes, affecting $15 billion in US exports. The metals industry, particularly steel and aluminium, will also be impacted by a 25% tariff on imports, which could raise costs for US manufacturers. Alcohol, including wine, faces potential 200% tariffs, with US imports totaling $6.3 billion in 2023. As President Trump's new tariffs take shape, global reactions have been swift. In Mexico, President Claudia Sheinbaum reaffirmed that her country would not engage in retaliatory measures, but it is prepared to respond strategically.
We do not believe in an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, because that always leads to a bad situation. Of course, measures are taken because measures are taken on the other side, but the dialogue must continue. It's not about tit for tat, but about what is best for Mexico and how to face this situation.
Meanwhile, in Australia, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese stressed that while his government would not impose reciprocal tariffs, it would defend Australia's trade interests, particularly in sectors like beef exports. The EU, led by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, has stated that it is prepared to retaliate if necessary.
Europe did not start this confrontation. We think it is wrong. But my message to you today is that we have everything we need to protect our people and our prosperity. We have the largest single market in the world. We have the strength to negotiate. We have the power to push back. And the people of Europe should know that together we will always promote and defend our interests and our values, and together we will always stand up for our Europe.
She mentioned the importance of dialogue, but made it clear that the EU would not hesitate to respond if required. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney also made it clear that Canada would assess its response carefully, ensuring it protects national interests while continuing dialogue with the US. On Wall Street, market reactions have been mixed, with some sectors experiencing gains, while others, particularly those sensitive to trade policies, have seen volatility.
And we have a large part of our economy right now saying, let's take a pause. That doesn't mean we have a problem. It means there's not enough information for confidence to move forward. That's not a situation that's going to change real quickly in the market right now.
Economists remain divided on the long-term impact of these tariffs. Some view them as a potential opportunity for countries to become less reliant on imports. However, there is widespread concern that these measures could disrupt the global economy and lead to higher inflation.
To the extent that the cost of foreign products goes up, that could be a benefit to domestic producers of particular goods. It could bring about increased manufacturing. It may not. We don't know the impact. We do know that when they tariffed China, everyone thought the world was going to fall apart, and it didn't. So again, the reason for now doing this is also because doing it on a broader basis is because China found ways to circumvent normal channels and, lose some of its profitability out of the trade, but continued to be able to export product through other countries at lower and lower prices.
Trump's decision to impose tariffs is not a sudden move. On his inauguration day, he suggested tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico, and by February he was targeting China and the European Union. Later on, he warned that BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, could face tariffs if they pursued an independent currency, further intensifying his approach. Trump's aggressive stance on trade has been consistent, with these tariffs seen as part of his broader America First trade policy.
Don't take our cars.
Earlier today, I was joined on the programme by our Washington correspondent Ubi Shabandar, who told us more about Trump's tariffs and who they might impact.
What is a tariff? Essentially, a tariff is a tax on goods produced or imported from overseas. And the White House is saying that this is about jobs, that so many countries overseas, including the European Union, Canada, and China, have a significant amount of tariffs on American goods. And President Trump's argument is that it is only fair for the United States to reciprocate and put tariffs of its own. We've seen in the past few days the White House posting on social media tariffs on American agricultural goods and dairy products that are being placed by the EU, India, and Canada. And so what we are expecting here is a White House essentially make a broad-reaching announcement of tariffs that go on top of previously existing tariffs, such as the ones on Canada, China, and Mexico, that the White House has placed due to concerns that those countries are not doing enough to curb the smuggling of the deadly drug fentanyl that has killed thousands of Americans and is being smuggled into the U.S. on a regular basis.
Ukrainian and Russian officials have both reported strikes on their territories as both sides accuse each other of breaking a US-brokered partial ceasefire.
At least 4 people have died and 3 others remain injured after a Russian attack on Kryvyi Rih in Ukraine. Authorities say Russia launched a ballistic missile on industrial facility. Meanwhile, 8 people have been injured, including 3 children, following a Russian drone attack on the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv. The attacks came as both sides accuse each other of breaking a US-brokered partial ceasefire on strikes on energy and Black Sea infrastructure. Authorities say 10 houses were hit in the overnight attack, which injured a 9-month-old infant, a 7-year-old boy and a 16-year-old girl. In Russia, 2 high-rise buildings have been damaged in the southern city of Taganrog after Ukrainian drone attack. Authorities have declared a state of emergency in the region following the overnight attack that prompted the evacuation of 85 residents.
China has conducted military drills around Taiwan for a second day as tensions in the region continue to rise. State broadcaster CCTV showed footage of the army preparing rocket launch vehicles, while fighter jets, Navy ships and Coast Guard vessels took part. According to reports, the drills tested maritime and air strategic formations near Taiwan. It described them as a warning against separatist movements and a necessary step to protect national sovereignty. Taiwan condemned the exercise but says it had not observed any live fire. To Syria now. Our colleague Maria Rodriguez-Abalde has a special report from Aleppo's quarter controlled by the Kurds and isolated from the main part of Euphrates.
El-News is the first channel to enter in the Kurdish controlled areas in the north of Aleppo, but today is a difference because the civil council of the Ashrafiyeh and Sheikh Maksud neighborhoods are implementing the agreement with the Syrian Democratic Forces. Sheikh Maksud and Ashrafiyeh are considered neighborhoods within the city of Aleppo. The Ministry of the Interior, in cooperation with the Internal Security Forces, is responsible for protecting the residents. The prosecution of anyone wanted before the agreement will be forbidden, and the prisoners in both sides will be also released. The provisions of this interim agreement will apply until the Joint Central Committees agree on a sustainable solution. The Ministry of Interior, in cooperation with the Internal Security Forces, bears the responsibility for protecting the residents of the two neighborhoods and preventing any attacks or harassment against them. Also, armed manifestations are prohibited in the two neighborhoods, and weapons are the exclusive domain of the Ministry of Interior's Internal Security Forces. Earthworks will be removed from public roads, while the main checkpoints will remain under supervision of the ministry until security and stability are restored. Military forces will withdraw along with the weapons from the two neighborhoods to the area east of the Euphrates, and freedom of movement will be guaranteed. Based on the desire to promote coexistence, preserve civil peace, and achieve the goals of the Syrian revolution for freedom and dignity, and based on the belief that consensus among the various components of the Syrian people is the best way to confront current challenges, now we have this new reality for this new Syria.
Death threats against the judge in the Marine Le Pen case have been condemned by magistrate unions in France. The day before, Le Pen denounced a court ruling barring her from public office for 5 years, calling it a tactic to block her 2027 presidential bid. Her party chief, Jordan Bardella, is now calling for nationwide protests, while reaction across France and abroad continues to pour in.
France's biggest magistrates' union has condemned threats made against the judge who barred far-right leader Marine Le Pen from running in France's 2027 presidential election. Bénédicte de Pertuis, the head of a 3-judge panel that found Le Pen guilty, is under police protection after facing death threats and having her home address shared online.
And there is a political responsibility of everybody in office within the parliament, the government, when they say and when they attack judges as well, because it will spread within the society, and everybody, as I said before, online or in real life, might think, okay, I can attack a judge as well. It is not acceptable in a democracy, and there is a strong political responsibility.
Marine Le Pen, leader of France's far-right National Rally, has reacted strongly to a court ruling banning her from holding public office for 5 years. The conviction stems from charges of embezzling EU funds, which were intended for parliamentary staff, but were instead used to pay party employees who did not work for the European Parliament. Le Pen was sentenced to 4 years in prison, 2 of which are suspended, with the remaining 2 years under home detention. The 5-year ban on holding public office is immediate, blocking her from running in the 2027 election. Prosecutors also requested a €300,000 fine. Le Pen has vowed to appeal, calling the ruling a political move aimed at stopping her campaign. While Le Pen is preparing for her appeal, it's her party's leader, Jordan Bardella, who is now leading the charge for protests. He has called on supporters to take to the streets this weekend to express their opposition to the ruling, framing the decision as an attack on democracy. International reactions have also been strong. US President Donald Trump described the ruling as a very big deal with far-reaching consequences, while the US State Department warned against the exclusion of people from the political process. The ruling has drawn support in social media from Le Pen's European allies, with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán posting "Je suis Marine" on X. Swedish journalist, political commentator Peter Sweden posted on X that Marine Le Pen banned from being able to become the French president in 2027. She was the favourite to win. Is this what democracy looks like? He added. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni also expressed concern, saying that the ruling deprived millions of citizens of their right to political representation. French centrist politician Prisca Thévenot, however, defended the judicial system, saying that if political leaders demand firmness from the courts, they must accept the consequences when those decisions are made.
The death toll is continuing to rise after last week's earthquake in Myanmar. Nearly 3,000 people have lost their lives and over 4,600 are left injured. The Myanmar junta has declared a ceasefire from April 2nd to 22nd to show sympathy for earthquake victims and support rescue efforts.
Finding anyone alive has become more challenging in the debris after the earthquake that struck Myanmar and neighbouring Thailand. The death toll has now risen to nearly 3,000. 4,000 people were injured and 373 are still missing. This was according to the latest data shared by the local media stations. This rescuer in Mandalay says the conditions of searching or even finding some life has become testing.
There is zero possibility of finding survivors. It is the 5th or 6th day after the earthquake and the weather is extremely hot. So it is not possible for people to stay alive in this situation. We have only recovered bodies so far.
However, officials haven't lost all hope in Bangkok.
Hope, but I mean, frankly, hope gets a little bit slimmer every day, each day pass, But I think today our staff got phone call from Myanmar that they just found a survivor. How old? Just one survivor, and it happened at the same time. So it happened there, it can so happens here too, yeah.
Beijing has sent the first batch of $13.9 million worth of emergency supplies, including tents, blankets and first aid kits to Myanmar. The United States has also pledged $2 million worth in aid, while Russia has set up a mobile hospital in Mandalay. India deployed a search and rescue team, medical professionals and aircraft carrying essential items. The European Union has launched a humanitarian air bridge operation, sending 80 tons of supplies, including child protection kits and health materials for the country, to be distributed by UNICEF and local partners. The United Nations Children's Agency, UNICEF, says the number of injured or deceased infants is still unknown. There are now also fears that diseases could spread.
Now, we've seen the official figures in terms of the death toll. We think it's very likely that there are hundreds of children that are among the dead. We believe that there are children that are under the rubble, and we also know that there are children that have lost their parents. So when there's a sudden onset emergency, often what happens is what we call family separation. That means children may be losing their caregivers, or they may be separated. In the chaos and confusion, they may be separated, and that creates new risks for children because children are reliant on their parents for food, for safety, for education, all these things. So one of the priorities needs to be safety for children. That needs to be the top priority. Shelter is incredibly important, and making sure children are with their families.
As the situation develops, the full scale of the damage may not be clear until the coming days or weeks, as both nations begin the long journey toward recovery.
Val Kilmer, the American actor best known for playing Batman, has died from pneumonia at 65 years old. Kilmer passed away Tuesday night in Los Angeles, surrounded by family, as confirmed by his daughter. In the 1990s, he became an important Hollywood actor, best known for his roles in Batman Forever, Top Gun and Heat. Many fans and colleagues shared condolences on social media, honouring him as one of America's greatest actors. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier continues his first ever visit to the South Caucasus. After holding talks in Armenia, the head of the German state is visiting Baku, where he was received by the President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev. After the meeting, the heads of state held a joint press conference. A News' Orkan Amashov has more.
Well, the press conference with the participation of Azerbaijani and German presidents is now over. It, of course, followed the bilateral face-to-face meetings and also meetings involving both delegations. A couple of important matters have been reflected upon. Of course, the world has changed quite dramatically as of early 2025. It's a time for opportunity, and those opportunities are to be properly utilized. President Aliyev initially welcomed German president. He referred to the previous contacts, of course, when German president was foreign minister. They knew each other, and there have been contacts in the past, of course, and the wide range of issues revolving around connectivity, energy connections, middle corridor, importance of Azerbaijan in a geographical and political sense of this word, importance of getting access to markets in Central Asia, and Azerbaijan's pivotal role, and other matters have been reflected upon. Of course, peace treaty negotiations between Azerbaijan and Armenia also referred to, and Azerbaijani president made very clear that although of course draft text of that agreement is now over, that 17 provisions have been agreed. There are other conditions which are not related to peace treaty. They're about the Armenian constitution, also dissolution of the OSCE Minsk group. They need to be sorted out as well. And once all of these things are sorted out, peace treaty will be signed. And German side was mostly reflecting on the necessity of seizing the moment, that it is too much a great important moment to be missed, and also of course trade turnover between these two countries have been reflected upon. There's an increase, and bilaterally, of course, the trade is going to be a central element. Azerbaijan's exports to Germany were reflected upon as well. Green energy was another element, and on the whole, I suppose that positivity seemed to dominate today's press conference, and the answers to the questions also added to the momentum that we're currently observing in bilateral Azerbaijani-German relations. Orkan Amashov, A News.
Now, Orkan had the opportunity to ask a question to German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier during the briefing. Let's take a look.
I'm Orkan Amashov, A News TV station. Thanks to both presidents. And my question is addressed to President Steinmeier. Currently, former leaders of the separatist puppet regime created by Armenia inside Azerbaijan, in Azerbaijan's Karabakh region, are on trial in Baku. In their testimonies, they have admitted that bombardment of Azerbaijani cities and villages, which resulted in the deaths of more than 100 civilians, were carried out under the direct orders of Armenia's political leadership, and namely Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. Bearing in mind all of these grave war crimes, the question is why no sanctions were imposed by the European Union and its institutions on Armenia and on its political leadership. Thank you.
I believe this is a repetition of the first question we've already addressed. When I look at German foreign policy, which I have followed closely for several years, and in many of those years also had responsibility for, I can only say, on behalf of myself and our country, that we have never accepted a state of unrest. We have never supported territorial claims by one state over another. Rather, our position has always been that internationally recognized borders must be upheld and respected. In this regard, I can only say that Germany has remained true to its position over the past year. And I hope that this is also understood here in the region. What we want is for the years of unrest between these two countries to give way to a future of peaceful coexistence, a future in which stability in Armenia and Azerbaijan contributes to broader stability across the entire South Caucasus region. I believe that would be a gain for all sides.
After signing a historic border agreement with Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan's president has emphasised the need for constructive engagement with Afghanistan, calling a stable Afghanistan vital for both Central Asia and the European Union. Tamim Bahis reports from Kabul.
In an exclusive interview with Euronews, Uzbekistan's President Shavkat Mirziyoyev reaffirmed his country's commitment to Afghanistan, emphasizing that Uzbekistan has never turned away from its neighbor. He stressed that Afghanistan's stability and development rely on constructive engagement with regional partners, particularly Uzbekistan as one of its closest and most significant allies. The president noted that many who once questioned Uzbekistan's approach to Afghanistan now recognize its necessity. He also highlighted the changes under Afghanistan's current leadership, pointing out that stability has improved, allowing resources to be redirected toward key infrastructure projects, including airports, rail networks, and energy and water facilities. A major focus, he said, has been on curbing opium cultivation. According to the United Nations, Afghanistan has witnessed a dramatic 95% reduction in opium production following the Taliban's 2023 ban on drug sale. Additionally, efforts are underway to support rural communities by promoting alternative agriculture, reducing the country's reliance on drug trade. Looking ahead, President Mirziyoyev urged the international community to see Afghanistan as a land of emerging strategic opportunities. He stressed the importance of integrating Afghanistan into global economic processes, particularly through infrastructure development. To achieve this, he said Uzbekistan is ready to collaborate with the European Union and other international partners to drive a positive agenda that supports Afghanistan's recovery and long-term growth. The president also underscored the need for continued investment in education as a crucial aspect of Afghanistan's future. He concluded by stating that ensuring Afghanistan's stability and reconstruction is in the shared interest of both Central Asia and the European Union. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for A News.
When it comes to billionaire rankings, numbers don't always tell the same story. This time, the spotlight is on Bidzina Ivanishvili, Georgia's wealthiest and most politically influential figure. Two of the world's leading financial indexes, Forbes and Bloomberg, have placed his fortune on opposite ends of the spectrum with a staggering difference of billions. So what's behind this sharp contrast, and could politics play a role in how wealth is measured? Let's break it down.
The latest Forbes Billionaires Index, updated on April 1, shows a sharp decline in Bidzina Ivanishvili's reported wealth. According to Forbes, his fortune has dropped from $4.9 billion last year to $2.7 billion. Meanwhile, the Bloomberg Billionaires Index, which uses different methodology, has described his wealth significantly higher at $7.35 billion. The Forbes does not explain the reason for this decrease, only providing the general background about Bidzina Ivanishvili's business activities in Russia, his political career in Georgia, and legal battle with Credit Suisse. Meanwhile, the Bloomberg has previously estimated his wealth at record $7.8 billion in February. The gap between these estimates is not unique for Bidzina Ivanishvili. Even the world's richest individuals have seen differences in their reported net worth. For example, Forbes currently values Elon Musk's fortune at $340 billion, when the Bloomberg estimates it at $316 billion. The variation comes from differences in calculation methodology, access to financial data, and how the assets are classified. Political situation can also be a factor in how Forbes assesses linked to the country. Sometimes Forbes adjusts estimates according to economic risks, legal uncertainties, or broader political instability. Given Ivanishvili's past role as Georgia's prime minister and his continued political influence, the ranking may reflect a more cautious valuation of his assets. For now, Ivanishvili's ranking is 1,299th in Forbes Billionaires list, while the Bloomberg suggests that his actual wealth could be so much higher. This is Nina Nikolashvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
You were watching A News. Thank you for staying with us and have a wonderful evening.